this idea that there's no free lunch, there really has been a relatively free lunch for 40 years, dropping rates for 40 years. And we've had the disinflationary effect of China, which I briefly hit upon. And so I think those are over. And as a consequence of that, I think that the V bounce is over. I think the idea that every dip should be bought, every bear market will lead to a much better bull market. I really think that those days are over, and I don't know. I don't know when it's going to start. I mean, we could double from here for all I know, although I'll be shocked, but it wouldn't be the first time. So, in any event, I am the most bearish person I know. I could name for you probably 6 people who are sort of in the same crude ballpark of me as bearish, 6 pundits. And the rest of the world talks about 20% corrections like it's the end of days. I go, that's the warm up. That's the first inning as far as I'm concerned.
On this episode of What the Finance Podcast, I had the pleasure of welcoming back Dave Collum. So Dave is a return guest, doesn't need any introductions. So thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
It's always my pleasure. I have fun with these chats.
Yeah, and it's been a while since I think we sort of spoke early last year. So I'm excited to hear what you've, if anything's changed in your perspectives since then. But yeah, I guess normally how I start all these interviews is just a broad overview of your thoughts about what we're seeing in the economy, markets, maybe the world as well. So take it wherever you want.
Well, the world seems to be riddled with risk to me right now. I don't see where I see so many things that could go wrong at this point, and you never know when one of them's going to go wrong. And it seems like that something has got to break, and there's so many candidates for it. So our political system seems to be in a shambles. Our markets are top heavy to a nearly unprecedented level. The absurdity of how they got there, it's not some new era thinking. It's just flat out some sort of inflationary bubble that doesn't even seem to be backed by a good narrative. Unlike 2000, when you could pretend like we were entering Brave New World. And now it just looks like dumb money chasing, vast quantities of dumb money chasing dumb investments. So something will crack. The election, I don't know if the election will do it. Something will do it. Don't know what. Butterfly flapping its wings.
Yeah, I know this is something that we've sort of talked about quite a few times and now sort of multiple interviews in the past. Is just the fact that things keep getting worse and keep getting, more inflated and more debt? Or do you think, is there a chance that things have maybe shifted and,
Well, what a lot of people tend to overlook, and who did I hear? Who was it who said it? Maybe Singer. Maybe Singer said what people don't understand is the pain and suffering caused by duration, which he means time. Which you say, well, that's duration, but the bond market has its own duration sort of meanings and stuff. But this is what I've been predicting for quite a while now, that time is your worst enemy. During a bull market, time is your friend. I think when the next bear shows up, unlike previous bears where they've spent some period of time, which I consider brief, heading downward before they start heading back up without fail. I think that's a 40-year bias that's come from the fact that for 40 years, Fed policy has been loosening, interest rates have been dropping, demographics have been favorable. China's been providing cheap labor, Russia's providing commodities, all of which look like they're at the end of their rope. So I think the next couple of decades, we're going to have to grind it out slowly, and I think it's going to be a painful period in which economics may be fine, but I think the markets will basically do a lot of up and down and a whole lot more going nowhere. And I don't think people are ready for that, which is exactly the setup, actually. When people are not ready for it, that's what happens. So I'm just kind of waiting. Time is my enemy right now because although the markets are absurdly priced, those of us patiently waiting to buy assets at a fair price are kind of out of the game. So we're not getting to play, and I wouldn't short the thing. So I don't know what you do besides just sit on your hands and recognize that there's never in the history of markets been an overvalued market that didn't eventually find its way to undervalued. And so you start doing the arithmetic, and it's simple math. Once you lay out the valuations, you go from overvalued to undervalued. It is a very, very negative track. It's not a 20% correction. It's not even close.
Do you think this time will be the definite boom, or could it be sort of similar to what we saw in 2021, 2022, where there's sort of probably more 2022, where there's a bit of a drop, like 20%, and then we sort of get bought up and back to the races?
Well, so that one was part of what became a pretty serious inflationary impulse. And so this idea that there's no free lunch, there really has been a relatively free lunch for 40 years, dropping rates for 40 years. And so and we've had the disinflationary effect of China, which I briefly hit upon. And so I think those are over. And as a consequence of that, I think that the V bounce is over. I think the idea that every dip should be bought, every bear market will lead to a much better bull market. I really think that those days are over, and I don't know. I don't know when it's going to start. I mean, we could double from here for all I know, although I'll be shocked, but it wouldn't be the first time. So in any event, I am the most bearish person I know. I could name for you probably 6 people who are sort of in the same crude ballpark of me as bearish, 6 pundits. And the rest of the world talks about 20% corrections like it's the end of days. I go, that's the warm-up. That's the first inning as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. And is there anything in particular you'd be watching to sort of come to that, to realize the catalyst has come?
Well, it'll depend on if I'm right about the Fed and central banks being boxed in by inflation. So if we really have run out of runway, and that any effort to print our way out of a mess, which sounds so absurd when you say it, that you go, how can that possibly be, without a price, and the price is inflation. And what you now realize that a lot of people didn't realize until 2 or 3 years ago is that the inflationary price is not painless. I remember on Twitter, people would say, well, they'll just print it away. And I go, you're going to get crushed when they do that. You're going to get annihilated. So let's say the U.S. debt has got to be cut in half by some inflationary impulse. And they go, well, they'll just print it away. And I go, well, then the spending power of everything you own is going to be cut in half. That's the same as losing half your money. It doesn't matter how they do it. So, and our unfunded liabilities are in the 250 trillion category, of which 175 of those 250 trillion are just Social Security and Medicare, I think. And I actually had a discussion with a hedge fund manager who challenged that. And then I sent him a Treasury report, and right there in page 294, table whatever, was a line that said this is the unfunded liabilities for Social Security and Medicare, which are defined as things that you've promised that you have no idea how you're going to pay for, even after you project revenues going forward to infinity. And therefore the answer is, well, what happens? You go, well, this is like being told you have stage 4 liver cancer, and you go, well, what do we do? And you get your affairs in order. That's how I view it. Now, we won't die. Well, we might die. You never know if we get in a nuclear fight with Putin, but it'll feel like we ought to. It'll feel like a near-death experience. I think we'll be rising above the bed and looking down at our carcass for a while.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I guess a lot of people they've been paying into this system for decades, and they've sort of expect that there's going to be this pension at the end of the road, but
that's the problem.
It's going to be afforded.
So you have all these people who are now expecting to consume their asses off and do no more work, right? And so it's through the work that they talk about how the economy is a 70% consumption economy. I go, that's not an economy. And what is kind of a stupid definition of that? An economy is where you produce stuff, and then because you produce something, you get to consume, right? So someone's got to grow the food, make the stuff, do all the things you do. It is through that wealth creation process that you then get to consume. And if you don't grow the food, you don't get to eat. And so to say it's 70% consumption is really saying it's 70% borrowing at some level, right? Because really the economy should be production, gross domestic product. And we're going to start counting healthcare costs as GDP and stuff. We already do, of course. But the boomers are going to create a huge amount of GDP as it gets counted by getting sick, by getting their bladder stones taken out, getting their prostates taken out, and getting their teeth fixed, and all the things that old folks do. There's nothing about that being a product. And that is, if you think, well, yes, it is. You're benefiting from it. And I go, no. Imagine hypothetically that you weren't sick, that you weren't obese, that you didn't have a bladder problem. Wouldn't you be better off? Right? If I said, imagine you don't have a car, you'd say, well, I wouldn't be better off if I didn't have a car. Yeah, that's true. But imagine you had a car you were trying to keep on the road, and it was a 20-year-old car, and you were dumping tons of money into it. You would rather not dump tons of money into it. You would be a wealthier person if you did. So to call healthcare product, I think, is flawed. And so what gross domestic product healthcare division is really about is the cost of a rapidly depreciating asset, which is what we call boomers. So, and it's going to be a lot of money, and they're not producing anything. And the younger generations, which are smaller, less productive, in my opinion, less motivated, in my opinion, are either going to have to work harder, or the boomers are going to have to get less. It's going to be one of the two.
Well, the boomers keep working, which I know a lot of them probably are looking to do.
Well, and that's actually in some sense a plus, because that means you're producing something. If the boomers keep working, that is product. Right? And if you think of the olden days, you eat what you kill, and as a consequence, if you stopped doing something, if you stopped being functional, you died. And if you think about, like, I think we're heading for multi-generational housing again. Part of it's because the boomers have big houses, they don't know who to sell them to, and we are told, and I'm confident it's true, that the next generations coming up don't have the money to buy them at the price we want, right? At the assessed price. Mortgage, the cost of buying a house now has doubled. So either pay half as much for the house or pay twice as much of your salary for the house. And that's not going to happen. I also don't think the younger generation wants big McMansions. I think there's a problem there. I think that they've been raised to think green and small footprint and things like that. And I collect American antique furniture. The younger generation likes chrome. They like the nouveau tech. And so there's no reason to believe that the younger generation also wants to own a 6-bedroom McMansion for a 3.8 member family. That has not been wired into their DNA, I think. And so I think we'll have multi-generational housing. And what did that do? Well, in the olden days, it turns out while the parents were in the fields and hunting and doing things that parents did in the old days, the grandparents watched the kids. They cooked the meals. They did work around the house. And it provided daycare facility, so it saved on daycare. And it provided a way to take care of the grandparents as they got older without a huge added cost. And so I think we're going to head back to that. And at first, it'll feel like a failure, right? You hear about the kids living in the basement, what a disaster that is. Someone referred to the basement as the modern day opium den. I think it was Adam Taggart. But at some point, we're going to go back to the sort of addition on the side of the house where grandma lives. And that way you don't have to spend money on a nursing home and stuff like that. and I think it will get more efficient. And so that you'll see stuff like that. We'll adjust, but one's got to hope that we can gracefully, gradually get to this without catastrophic events taking us there the hard way, right? If you want to decelerate your car from doing 70 miles per hour, you'd rather tap the brakes than hit the bridge, right?
Yeah. Do you think, I guess the challenge that I see with that is that there's this sort of shift, especially recently in Europe, to the left. Will people be patient enough to sort of put up with these, this multi-generational house, or will this be this demand of a wealth sort of distribution or redistribution that everyone's talking about? I sort of read quite an interesting, I don't know if it was fake or not. It was on Twitter, and it was talking about Mark Zuckerberg sort of email to Peter Thiel, and he's talking about, we're donating to politicians not for what people want now, but what people want in 10 years, because that's when, there's probably going to be more millennials and more Gen Xers than there are boomers, and they're going to be the vast majority of people and have more say into what's happening. So do you think there's the potential for that? And then, that could, I don't think it would be good, but it seems like that's the way that parts of the world are going.
Yeah, but it won't necessarily be graceful. Here's a great example. I just heard the other day from a former student who is in pharma. Pharma, by the way, is almost completely locked down on hiring. So if you think we're not in a problematic economy, explain to me why pharma is not hiring anybody. That is a big enough industry now where if they're not hiring anyone, that in itself is denting the economy at some level. There's other reasons why maybe they're not, but they're interviewing people, and he told me they stink. The candidates are not very good. They seem to lack the drive and whatever. And so now what happened over the last couple of years, about 20 years ago, I fought a unionization movement at Cornell, not because of a profound opposition to unions, but rather I didn't think the unions would be good for graduate students. Very heterogeneous group. Unionization works fine on a group that's not heterogeneous. And then about 8 years ago, I fought them again when a new union showed up, and then last year we got unionized. So I don't know if the two efforts in which I was able to, and the one most recently, it was almost single-handed. I had no help whatsoever. It was me getting in fights with the union in public. But I held them back, and then a year ago they unionized because society has changed and the kids are, sort of halfway to Marxist already. So I knew that we couldn't win. Well, it's happening all over the country. So what's going to happen? Well, first of all, the grad student unions are going on strike tactically, and so that they'll go on strike in September 1st, right? And the universities are going, what do we do now? And because of the rules, they can't hire undergrads to TA because those are not allowed. Can't hire non-grad students to TA because that's not allowed. And so the universities are literally put in a position where they have to just not be universities or not offer lab courses or something. I don't know. But I've also been told, and this is the more ominous part, that everything's shifting to a 40-hour week. Now, I think researchers, most of the schools with grad students are really research institutions. They teach, but you kind of teach to pay the bills. The school gets famous. Harvard's not Harvard because they teach. Harvard's Harvard because of their famous scholars. And my colleagues could all live with a 40-hour work week of their students, but what I'll tell you is that anyone who's learned a highly technical skill, whether it's chemistry, physics, or violin or whatever, immersion is a big part of it. There's some period in your life, whether you're trying to become a lawyer and you work an 80-hour work week as a young lawyer in a big firm, there's immersion where you really, you fall asleep and you dream about what you're doing. And without that, I think you tend to not quite learn. And so if I was in grad school now, I wouldn't want a union telling me, look, you can't work more than a 40-hour week. Because I would want to work more than a 40-hour week. I love working. I love doing what I'm doing. If I had my way, I'd be in my office, 16 hours a day. And so the union will disrupt the educational process in a profound way, because 40 hours is not much, especially because out of 40 hours, the kids will get about 20 hours worth of work because they'll be texting and crap like that. And so I think they're going to destroy, I think the unionization will destroy sort of the profound educational experience, the cathartic like experience that you get from just focusing intensely for a window of your life. And I can trace my current career, which is 45 years old, back to a window when I was young, where I really immersed. And I learned so much, and that foundation is the foundation on which I built everything else. And you take away that, you take away who I am today. So I worry about that. I just don't know where it all goes in the end. I'm a little pessimistic. It's not just about bear markets, not to mention the fact that I think we could end up in nuclear war because we've got idiots driving the cab, but stuff like that.
Yeah, I would push back. I think, if someone's really interested in it, they're going to immerse no matter if they're at work or not. So it's probably not going to be something that prevents them from spending that time doing it. It's just maybe they can choose to do it in their spare time. And, as you said, the results will show in 10 years down the track when the person who's immersed has this knowledge and the other person doesn't.
I think you're underestimating the importance of your peers. So, for example, ask any elementary school teacher or parent or anything. The kids go off to school and they immerse they learn more from each other than they learn from the teacher, and they learn on their own. They swap information. And so I think COVID actually illustrated that. Anyone who went through COVID, we're getting kids in the grad program who learned organic chemistry during COVID. And they could, in theory, have studied just as hard, but it looks like they didn't. So I think, and when I don't think people work as well as that. I think it's like if you're gonna break the world record in a race, you're probably gonna do it with someone running right on your heels. You're going to do it in a competition. You're going to do it with pressure behind you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So you saying that, I guess, is this a societal thing? Is this a university thing? Is this?
It's pack animal. It's primal. It's the way we function as the human species, and already they're very distracted. I mean, and this is not meant to be a sanctimonious statement, because so am I. You and I are doing a podcast. When I was younger, I wouldn't be wasting time podcasting, right? I'd be doing chemistry. And here I am podcasting, but I'm 69 years old, so it doesn't matter for me. That ship has sailed. Whatever I am, I am. And think of it as a career change, maybe. But if you're 20 years old and let's say you were trying to get work done, but your friends are texting you, and you have, when I had 5 minutes to kill when I was in the lab, I'd go clean glassware. They have 5 minutes to kill. They pop their phone open. So I'm cleaning my glassware using the useless time slots. I used to read for 5 minutes, waiting for something to finish on the bench and things like that. I don't think they're doing that now. So I think I got more done. I was in grad school for about 2.5 years. I think I got more done in 2.5 than they'll get done in 5. That's my guess.
Hey everyone, sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to extend a massive thank you to you for listening and tuning in, and for your support over these 3 years. So we've had, hundreds of guests that we've welcomed on the podcast. We've had millions of views. We've hundreds of thousands of different people listening in. So I just wanted to thank you. I started this as a student, and now currently working, and I've always done this on the side just because I have a passion for it and I've enjoyed it. And probably similar to yourself, you listen to all these, different YouTube channels and podcasts of people listening to different guests. That's how I started, and I just wanted to sort of take the plunge and be able to have the opportunity to speak to these people, and you've made that happen. So thank you very much. Just myself, don't make any money from this, and it's really a passion project. So thanks for supporting that passion of mine. If you wanted to support the channel, all I ask is if you could like, subscribe, or even comment, positive or negative feedback. I'm always willing to take constructive criticism. I'd really appreciate that. But otherwise, thanks so much. If you can believe it, only 14% of our listeners actually subscribe to the podcast. So yeah, if you can, great. If not, no problem at all. Thanks for listening, and yep, let's get back to the show. So if we go to from the, you talk about the US economy, is there anything else that you've sort of read recently, or that's just surprised you or interests you that you're sort of currently seeing in the world?
Well, the people I care about see the economy rolling over. Um, it's election year, so a lot of the statistics are corrupted by the fact that they're reporting good jobs numbers and then revising previous month's job numbers. And so, as I said to Stephanie Pomboy one day, sort of semi-privately, I say semi because now I'm telling you the story. I said, watch the little stuff. Don't look at federal employment numbers. Find a way to look at local employment numbers. Find a way to look at state employment numbers. You want to look at economic metrics that are too small for the people who like to rig the numbers to make them look good. Bother. And so if you can get a read on what's going on in some industry that tells you about gives you economic information that flies in the face of the favorable economic numbers during an election year, then you'll get a better read. It has more economic information in them, and they all look to me like they're rolling over. Everything looks like it's rolling over except for the stock market. And then you got there's all sorts of fallacies out there that of the type that if you just are paying attention, you go, wait a minute, that isn't even true. So, people talk about how low interest rates are bullish. That turns out to be wrong. Turns out dropping interest rates are bullish. Low rates are not. You've already squeezed the juice out of that orange. And so rates dropped from 16 to 0 over a 40-year period, and that was bullish. Once you get to 0, you're done. You've got no more tailwind from those rates. And then you see people who are talking about how it's going to be great, as soon as the Fed starts dropping rates, dropping Fed funds rates. There's a short-term window now. Then the market's going to take off. And it sounds like a contradiction of my own statement, but the short-term stuff is just white noise. But if you look at the last two major downturns, the 08-09 and the 2000 to 2003 downturn, the day that the Fed started dropping the rates was essentially the same day that the markets topped. So the guys who say, look, as soon as this Fed starts dropping the rates, we're just going to soar, are ignoring facts. They're ignoring the fact that that's exactly wrong. And usually the markets bottom. And again, this is the age of the V-bounce. So I'm not even sure they're going to bottom the same way next time, but I'm not sure they're going to bounce off the bottom. But if the Fed start dropping rates, the last two major downturns tell you you're about to lose at least 50% of market cap. And it's going to follow the rates down. The market cap drop is going to follow the rates down. All you have to do is look at a plot of the Fed funds rate superimposed upon the S&P 500. And the drop, the beginning of the rate dropping cycle as the beginning of the bear market. And so I don't see how many people who think they're watching these markets carefully could possibly think to the contrary. It's mystifying to me. So,
yeah. No,
I also think Powell's going to try to hang in there and hang tough too. I don't think he's going to, and that I think that means it'll be an even rougher ride down, because the longer the duration problem is, debts are rolling over and people are rolling from a 2% interest rate to a 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever. Your profit margins are going to go to hell in a handbasket if you're a company. So companies borrow tons of money, and now they have to roll over that debt. And as their profit margins drop, then they can't pay off the debt. So there's this odd irony, right? When they need twice as many profits to pay off the debt, they have half as many profits. So,
yeah. Do you see, it's something that I guess that's been talked about as well, is that there's going to be an 18-month lag for interest rates to start kicking in. So you imagine when they start cutting, it's going to sort of be a similar longer term lag, which they're probably going to cut too late.
well, see, I don't think it's too late. See, everyone's talking about the Fed should be cutting rates. I'm going, no, let us hit a wall. I just don't agree with that, actually. I think just, the Fed said it was going to hurt. They said they were going to cause, Powell used the word pain 3 times. Someone explained to me where the pain is besides the pain of inflation, right? There is some pain out there, but it's not the kind of pain you get in real butt-kicking recessions. We don't have that kind of pain yet. So I think Powell wants good job numbers. I think he agrees with Biden on that point, because Powell wants to be able to hold the rates up. I think he wants to wring some of the crap out of the system as much as he can before all of a sudden there's a crisis and he has to respond. So I think he intends to stay, high for longer. And this isn't even high. What are the rates at 5% or something? If you'd told me the rates would be 5%, I'd say, holy shit, what drove them down to 5%? 5% was ridiculous for most of my life.
Yeah. So if we go to, you mentioned Biden there, there's been a bit of a firestorm recently over the past few weeks about, will he run, will he not? Trump's been, I read this, that there's apparently a surprise how quiet he's been, just trying to sort of let this all unfold without any controversy. So what are your thoughts on this own topic?
Well, that if Trump was opening his mouth, he should be slapped, because there's some maxim about when your enemy's destroying themselves, don't get in the way, right? I have kind of a question. First of all, what seems clear to me is that Biden was teed up to fail in the debate. And it's not that he had to be teed up to fail, but the pundits were ready, because if the pundits who had been backing him right up to that moment really thought he could pull it off after the debate, there would have been some chaos. Remember when Epstein died and there were no talking points about what to do with Epstein's dying? And everyone was just expressing their opinion, and they were all over the ballpark. That's what it looks like when people are trying to figure something out honestly. Within 20 seconds after the debate was over, if you were in the business of supporting Biden for the last 4 years, which most of these networks were, right? They would never say anything bad about Biden. They would always say something bad about Trump. And all of a sudden Biden tanked. Your post-debate analysis, you would be trying to figure out what the hell to do, right? You'd be going, what do I say? Oh my God, just yesterday I said Biden was sharp as a tack, and now he bombed it. What do I do, right? So there'd be hand-wringing, there'd be confusion, there'd be chaos, there'd be people saying, oh, I think it's okay. Others say, no, I think this is a serious problem. But there would be chaos for a while. There was not. Every network, every station, every pundit said he should go right away. So that told me that they were told in advance that Biden was going to get a fatal decapitation in that debate, and that they were to swing the machete. And they did. And then the one thing I don't quite know about is, and Biden said, oh, no, you don't. And I don't know. I don't know if that part was planned. I could believe almost anything at this point, but it seems as though someone forgot to tell the Biden camp that we're about to decapitate your candidate. You got to go to the light quietly, or else all hell's going to break loose. And I'm confident they could get Biden to quit, right? You just say, look, we're going to open up investigations into your dealings with Burisma and with China, and we're going to crack open Hunter's laptop, and we're going to, right? There's a million ways to get Biden because he's corrupt as hell. He's super corrupt. And I'm not sure he's as corrupt as the Clintons, but he's super corrupt. And so they could easily flush him out the hard way. And I'm suspecting they will. Now, the question is, where do we go from here, Anthony? Who do you think is going to be the Democratic candidate?
What do you think, Newsom? They're going to bring him in?
So I have different. One is it could be Biden. They could say, okay, we'll just let him go to the finish. I listened to a great Walter Kern, Matt Taibbi podcast this morning where they were talking about the bizarre paradox where the pundits are saying Biden's got to go. He's not competent, but it doesn't matter because the presidency's solid. So they're saying the president doesn't matter, but they're simultaneously saying, but Trump will matter. And then they're also saying that that even though the president's lost his marbles and he's not capable of doing the presidency, we're still safe and he can still be the commander-in-chief of the most powerful country in the world. And so there's this huge paradox. The Walter Kern, Matt Taibbi interview on this is really spectacular. And so I see several paths. One is that they try to slip a winner in. If I were Newsom, besides the fact that I have to deal with two problems. One is that I look like a 1980s porn star. The second is that I would constantly be having to explain what I had done to California, or what I had facilitated in California. If he puts his ego in check and says, rational individual says, what's the best plan? For him, the best plan is to sit tight till 2018, 2028. Why stick your hand in the wood chipper of Donald Trump when all you have to do is let someone else get that nod, and then you come in and you just be the hero in 2028? I think if they go with Newsom, then they're trying to win. They could win with Kennedy, but since he seems to be at least somewhat honest and would go after some powerful people, they don't want him near the White House. If they put Kamala in there, which is interesting, the other day, she made reference to, on a tweet, she said they're gonna bypass a black woman yet again to go for a white guy. And I'm going, oh my God, she's whipping the Democrats. She's beating the Democrats with her own baseball bat. They are the party of DEI. And so for them to bypass her doesn't look good for them. I mean, I actually think it does. I think it shows that they're not as DEI'd out of their minds as they act. Because I do think Kamala's beyond stupid. But if they decide to go with Kamala, I think they're basically conceding the 2024 election, and they're simultaneously, the win is that they're smothering her political career in the crib at this point.
So would you say that's probably the most likely option, in your opinion?
Well, between her and Biden, I don't know, but I don't know, because Newsom, he might not be able to say no to the chance, right? It might be one of these things that the force is so strong pulling him, the tractor beam pulling him into the swamp, that he can't say no. That takes a lot. It takes a lot to know when it's not time to go for that next level. It's like playing a board game, right? There's times where you move, right? Monopoly, where you start building houses, building hotels, and trying to destroy your opponent, but ending up cash poor. and ending up in potential trouble. So you got to know when to strike. And if Newsom's highly tactical, I think he should wait. Of course, I would love to see him never get near the White House, so I don't care what he does. But so I think if they give it to Kamala, then they're writing off the election. I think then the scary part is that I think they'll be trying to set up Trump such that whatever it is they want, the deep state wants in place, and that Trump can't get in the way of, they got to do before he's president. And so let's say they want to bomb country X, whatever country X is, Iran, maybe. They're going to have to start doing it before he's president so that he is already entangled in the mess. So he inherits the mess, as opposed to, because if here's a prediction: Trump gets to be president, Ukraine war's over. It's over that day. Trump will end that easily. Anyone could end it who wanted to as president of the United States. Just say, look, we're done. This is a border war. This is not our business. And he said he'd do that. So it's stuff like that. So maybe they're trying to tee Trump up. Maybe they're trying to set it up such that he will inherit on his watch, not Biden's watch, the collapsing economy, right? There's all sorts of things they could do to put an anchor around Trump's ankle, to put a ball and chain around his ankle.
Yeah, and if we go back to, I think Newsom, he's almost like a Bernie Sanders. He's got too much sort of baggage that he's carrying with California. He's slick, but I just don't know.
Slick. He's greasy.
Yeah.
But the problem is, what is the evidence that baggage hurts you in the modern political era? Right now, I don't see evidence that baggage is a problem.
Yeah, but destroying probably the best state in the country isn't really a good look. And you can say whether he's destroyed it or not, but he's definitely
he'll just say he didn't. He'll just say he didn't. The mass media will say he didn't. They won't ask him tough questions. And then the rest of the population will not know that California has been destroyed.
Yeah, I don't know if that works anymore, as we've seen with Biden, and people are trying to, could you imagine Trump on stage with him and what he'd say about the record in California?
Well, but look at the events that have occurred. So the Biden laptop has got dirt on it beyond comprehension. Nothing's happening. The COVID story, forget about where the virus came from. We all know it came from a lab. Anyone with half a brain knows it came from a lab. And if you're paying reasonably close attention, you realize it's a combination of Chinese and American scientists who created it. And that's not even the big story. The big story is that the vaccine killed and maimed tons and tons of people. It might have done more damage than the virus. I know there's people listening going, oh, how could you say that? I said, well, you haven't done your homework. I've been in a doctor Zoom group for the last 4 years, and we've had everyone come through and guest lectures and stuff. And I've got the facts. And the treatment of COVID probably killed more people than COVID did. And the vaccine, which is being given to children now, is maiming children, and yet nothing happens. So this is, if you want to understand what's happening in the world today, start reading books on authoritarianism, and then you'll say, oh, that's what's happening. I didn't realize. Now maybe I understand how the German state went off the rails and participated in the Holocaust and weird stuff like that, and how the Cultural Revolution in China got legs, and how the Soviet Union got legs. And if you say it can't stop, it can't happen here, you've lost the trail of history, which shows it can absolutely happen anywhere.
Yeah, Good point. So if you look at your portfolio, you mentioned that, complete shift. You mentioned that you're completely are you completely in cash, or do you have other assets that you sort of
No,
invested in? No.
I dabble. I mean, I have a lot of cash. A lot of cash is, sort of short duration treasury, sort of 5% return stuff. A lot of gold's been good this year. Gold, silver, probably 30% gold, silver. I've got a house that's 3 times the size I need. Not size. The size is fine, but it's sitting on a lake looking eastward, hanging off a 100-foot cliff. So it's 3 times the cost, maybe 3 times the value of what I need, but it also has a huge positive effect on my life. And it's kind of what I'd call exposure to real estate. That's too much money to spend for it to not be considered an investment, which should tie inflation over the infinite term. And then I occasionally pick stocks for fun. They don't work particularly well. I do much better when I pick sectors. And so if you put a gun to my head and said, take your cash, put it to work today, what would I buy? Well, I'd probably go with the commodity super cycle story. How you do that is tricky, but I think what I would probably do is go simple and just buy a bunch of Fidelity. And I own some. And I own enough that I care when they go down. I mean, there's some things I own so little of, I'm just watching right now, that if they went to 0 today, I might not even be in the red for the day, that sort of thing. But Fidelity has about a half a dozen commodity-like mutual funds. And I got from 2000 to end of 2009, that decade, using those in gold, I compounded about 13%. So if I could repeat that decade, that would be spectacular. But if we have a big downturn, everything will get sucked down the drain. So I'm not rushing into the commodity super cycle story, because I do believe that a downturn and a credit crunch, and when regional banks start keeling over again because they bought too many treasuries, like Silicon Valley Bank and stuff like that, there will be a shortage of investment pressure on every asset. And so just because the stock is cheap doesn't mean it can't get cheaper. And I might miss some opportunities. I took a flyer to small cap. I happen to know a couple of people who have the largest private positions in small cap companies. I've bought positions in those from long conversations with them. And I'm getting a little beat up on that. But I have been assured that one of them, they're going to spin off a chunk of their company soon to a big company who needs a footprint in the U.S. for actually selling a small piece of it for what is currently the market cap of the company. And so that ought to boost the stock price a little bit. And it's been beating me up, but I can't lose sleep. I'm probably up 15%, 20% this year, which is, if you do 5% a year, inflation adjusted 5% would be, if you could guarantee me, if you could say, here's an inflation adjusted investment that'll give you 3 or 4% a year for eternity, I'd Texas Hold'em all in. I would accept that. I'd almost accept an inflation tying investment if it was a legitimate inflation tying investment. I could live with someone just saying, with the real inflation rate, your real inflation rate, we'll tie that, we'll match that, we'll set up a benchmark to your expenses, your grocery expenses, your taxes and stuff like that, and we will give you that return. I'd be tempted to take that offer just to tie inflation. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to beat inflation and not get sucked down the drain when the next downturn comes. And who knows when it's coming. People say, well, being early is being wrong. I go, not if when it comes, everyone else gets whooshed down the drain. That decade I just mentioned, compounding 13%, the S&P compounded negative. It's not a big negative, like 2%, negative 2% a year for 10 years. I mean, it was a bad period for S&P investors. And 10 years is a long time to tread water. So So one more decade like that.
Yeah, I don't think it. I think countries would go crazy if that were to happen now. But yeah, Dave, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Last question is, what is one message you'd like people to take away from that conversation?
Depends on your age. If you're young, save. Learn to spend less than you earn, even if it's hard. And if you can't, at least don't spend more than you earn. If you're older, if you're a boomer, don't assume that your returns going forward are going to be good. So make decisions wisely. And back to the youngsters, audiobooks. Read, and just commuting to work back and forth every day, I can do about 25 books a year. And so I read about history. History is where you learn that there's nothing new under the sun, and that this has all happened before, and there's times where life is brutal. That's actually got me a little spooked. I watched a dystopian movie the other day where people were getting their butts kicked by a comet coming into the earth and pummeling the earth. And I'm watching this movie, I'm going, that doesn't look different than Ukraine or Gaza. That's just across the globe. Whereas Ukrainians and Gaza, they're just local, but for them, every day they could be killed pretty easily. So if the U.S. ever hits one of those, we haven't hit one since 1860, I guess 1861. That was pretty bad. We might be due for another. So keep some food in your basement. Be a prepper. Be more of a prepper than most people are. If you assume you could be out of food for 2 months and ask what would you want to have stored that would keep you from having to gnaw your arm off. Besides that, enjoy yourself.
Yep, great message. Thanks again for your time. Really appreciated 50 minutes or so that we've been talking. So if anyone wanted to find out more about what you do, Twitter the best place for that?
Probably, yeah. David B. Collum on Twitter. And I've taken my positions for a big bear market, so most of my tweets are just nonsense. They're funny memes and thoughts. I tweet thoughts a lot where something comes to me and I go pop it out there, just random declarations of wisdom that might sound preposterous to most people, late at night I have an entertainment file on Twitter where I just get all sorts of funny videos. I'm constantly popping those suckers out, there's messages even in the humorous Twitter feeds.
Perfect. I'll put it in the description below, but yeah, thanks again for your time.
You bet.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening. I really appreciate the support. If you've got value out of this, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, or comment, good or bad feedback. I'm always open to that, but it really helps with the channel. As I said before, only about 14% of people actually subscribe to this channel. So if you were to that, it would really help. It could mean we could continue to grow. If not, thanks for watching and see you on the next show. And you also might like this video right here. All right, thanks again.